Mr. Brady Johnson. So there's still a few people coming in. I'm going to give them a second. Okay, so again, Brady, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's been a real, very different year for you and probably in your whole career. I don't know if you've ever had to do anything like this. So we appreciate your leadership and we are looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Superintendent Brady Johnson.
All right. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to talk to the Chamber. The Chamber has always been one of our biggest supporters in the good times and the bad times. And you guys fully understand, I think, the correlation between economic development and the economic well-being of the community and the strength of your public schools. So thank you for connecting the dots and always supporting public education. I'll start off very quickly by just making some comments about the last couple of months. I tell everybody, if you had told me 3 months ago that we would close all schools in America, I would have said you're crazy. This is unparalleled. We were on spring break, and the news about the virus was starting to dominate the news cycle at that time. That was about the second week of March. And so we made a bold decision to extend our spring break by a week. And fortunate for us, before that extension expired, the governor stepped in and closed all of the schools. So that gave us a lot of cover and took a lot of pressure off of us. So we've been closed since the middle of March, and we're winding up the school year this week. Unfortunately, graduations were washed completely out. I think all of the high schools have tried to be as innovative and creative as they possibly could with graduation. And we've made a commitment to our students that if there's any way possible in early August, we will try to hold some type of an on-site graduation for each of our high schools, but it's looking very unlikely that will be a possibility. But I do applaud our high school principals for trying to do something for our kids, and parents have stepped in. We had one of our endowment members came up with a great idea. Kelly, I think you came up with that idea about yard signs. Thank you so much for that and raising money for that. So we've been trying to make lemonade out of lemons these last couple of months. When the governor closed the schools, he gave us 4 directives. Number one, he wanted to keep the child nutrition program operating. And so we operated 16 sites over the last couple of months and served about 500,000 meals, believe it or not. That number is just staggering to me. We also opened that up to charter schools and anybody that was under the age of 18 that needed a meal could come in and get a meal. And I was really shocked at the need in the community. The second thing he asked us to do was to operate emergency child care facilities. So we opened 6 sites and reduced it to 3 sites. And we could only have 10 children at each site, but we had about 30 children, and those slots went to first responders in the community, healthcare providers, the essential workers. And so we did have 30 families take us up on that service. The heavy lift for us was the remote learning. We could not do any face-to-face instruction. We're very fortunate in the school system that several years ago, our Board of Education invested heavily in technology. So we were 1-to-1 in grades 6 through 12. And the distance learning went really well at the secondary level. A little more challenging with the primary because we just didn't have technology for every child. A lot of families were able to provide it. The other issue that we ran into was in some of the remote parts of our county, we do not have connectivity. And so that's been an issue all across the state. And hopefully now that a bright light has been shone upon that, the state's going to do something to help try to get everybody connected in the future. The fourth thing the governor asked us to do was to try to keep all of our employees on the payroll. So we have 2,700 full-time and 300 part-time employees, and I'm happy to say that we was able to do that. and we gave all of our employees the opportunity to work remotely. And some of our essential services like child nutrition and prime time and the business operation of the school system, we staggered our staff so that they could come in on alternating days and things of that nature. So somebody said the other day, boy, what a terrible way to end your career. And I said, you know, it's really the opposite of that. The last few months is probably the proudest I've ever been of the school system, because all of our people just rallied around and got outside the box and just made it work. And so we're very, very pleased with that. We are awaiting a re-entry plan from the Department of Public Instruction. The state superintendent and the state school board, which is meeting today, is working on what school will look like in August. And so we're all anxious to learn more about that. It's obviously going to look far different than anything that we've seen before. I tell people, I imagine the social distancing is going to be still in place, but how do you socially distance kindergartners? and when it comes to a school bus that has 72 kids on it, what does social distancing on a school bus look like? But those folks down in Raleigh are putting their heads together, so they'll be giving us some direction on that pretty soon. Locally here, we've already pulled together several groups of people that have started working on transition plans. And the 4 areas that we're kind of focusing on, we do know that a good reentry plan is going to have the same skeleton regardless of who develops the plan. So social distancing is something that we're looking at. We're going to have to figure out how to have less kids in a classroom and spread our desk out, things of that nature. It's very, very doubtful that we'll be having kids in the cafeteria. They will probably be eating their lunches in their classrooms. Not sure yet what athletics and extracurricular activities are going to look like, but I do suspect that there's going to be some pretty tight restrictions there as well. So another item is the personal hygiene. We're talking about setting up at the front entrance of each school a station so that you can sanitize your hands, and before anybody comes into that building, they've assured us that they've had personal responsibility with their hygiene and whatnot. We've got to come up with some type of screening process so that we can ask our employees and any visitors to our campuses about whether or not they've checked themselves. Do they have a fever? Have they been exposed? Have they had the test, whatnot? Mask is going to be something that's going to be challenging for us, but that's probably going to be a component of that. So there's just lots of unanswered questions right now. What I have told our staff, and I've shared this with the board too, we're going to have to go beyond any doubt that we can communicate with our parents and make sure that they know that we are taking this serious and that we've taken all necessary precautions to make sure that their children are safe in the schools. Some of my colleagues and I have been talking, and there's some speculation out there that there may be people not return to public schools. And so some of those estimates are that it could be as high as 10 to 15% of parents just don't have the peace of mind to put their kids back into a group setting like that. So that's something that we have to be mindful of. And again, our number one priority is just making sure that we have done everything that the health professionals and the scientists are telling us to do to make sure that our environment is safe. We are also working on our virtual learning component. Now, a lot of you don't know this, but ISS was the first school system in North Carolina to form a partnership with homeschool parents. That's been about 8 years ago. We call it the iAcademy. So we reached out to our homeschool population several years ago because homeschooling is so prevalent in this community. There's about 2,000 homeschools here in Iredell County. And you know, we've been averaging about 250 kids a year that are cross-enrolled in homeschool, and then they come to us, and we teach those children virtually, and that is K through 12. As a matter of fact, we had our little graduation ceremony this morning for our seniors in the I Academy. That program now has been replicated in 30 school systems across North Carolina over the years. And last week, Winston-Salem Forsyth reached out to us and was asking us about the I Academy. So what I've been telling our principals is this: by this fall, by this August, we're going to have to tell our parents that you have an option. If you feel good and comfortable about your children coming back to school, then we've got all of these safety precautions in place, and they're welcome to return. But from kindergarten through 12th grade, we're going to have to also tell those parents, however, if you don't feel safe with those children returning, we've got another option for you. And it may look like this. Maybe in the elementary school, you want to enroll your children with us virtually for reading and math. And if you're a stay-at-home mom or something, maybe you feel comfortable teaching social studies and science to your child. Maybe you say, hey, I'm going to take my kid out in the backyard and play with him. Will you give him a PE credit if I do that? And here's the thing, we're going to have to be able to say yes to that. What I told our staff just a few weeks ago, every university in North Carolina recognized several years ago that if you want to go to East Carolina, you can go to East Carolina, and you never have to set foot on that campus. We're going to have to get to the point in K-12 that we say the same thing to our parents. And it's a little more challenging for us, but I think if we take some blended learning approach for that, now some parents need us for daycare, and they're going to bring their children because they don't have the capacity or the time to teach from home. But for the parents that want to do that, it's an absolute must going forward. I do think that this pandemic is going to change education forever. It's going to change, first of all, the agrarian calendar that we've been running schools on for a couple centuries now. The reason we start school in September and we get out in May is so the kids can be off in the summertime to work on the farms, right? But guess what? They're not working on farms anymore. So I do think this is going to push people now to say, you can learn anytime you want to learn. Your learning is not limited between August and May of each year. The other thing that this is going to force us to do too is to ask the hard question, do you need as much brick and mortar as you have been accustomed to? If this remote learning is so great and it's so easy and convenient and more people want to learn virtually, do you need as many buildings as you've had in the past? So I do see that as the great debate that will be taking place over the next decade in public education. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about that. I see there's some popped up here. Shannon, do you want to ask questions?
All right, I've got a couple. So Beth asked, it's kind of perfect, you lead right into her question. She asked a question about the current construction projects that were done for the bond, 2014 bond and the 2020 bond. Are those currently still going forward, or where are we in those?
Yeah, good. Great question. We have two projects that are remaining from the 2014 bond. Those are our two middle schools, Third Creek Middle School and Brawley Middle School, which is on the campus of Woodland Heights, and it will be called Woodland Heights Middle School. Both those projects are winding up. We have a certificate of occupancy for both of those buildings now. Furniture is being delivered this week to those campuses. I was in the building down at Woodland Heights earlier this week. It's a beautiful building. It's just amazing. The property up here at Third Creek, similar. They're a little bit ahead of the Woodland project, but those teachers are packing their things up in their current schools and getting ready to move in over the next few weeks. And so they will be open and operational. The kids will arrive in August at those two schools. And both those campuses now will be K-8 configurations. So here in Statesville, Third Creek will be Third Creek Elementary School, and then the separate building there will be the middle school, and it will be called Third Creek Middle School. Brawley is moving down the road, and the name is changing. So Brawley Middle School will now be called Woodland Heights Middle School. Same configuration. It's a K-8 campus with two separate buildings there. They're tied together, but it's separate facilities as far as instruction goes. So we're really tickled. Both those projects are on time and they're under budget. And so that's always good to report to the taxpayers. And we will always, always be indebted to the community for approving those 5 projects for us. The other projects, of course, were the Performing Arts Center at South Iredell High School and North Iredell High School, and the new school out at Cool Spring, which has been open now for several years. So we have now completed all of our projects from that 2014 bond. And the chamber was a big advocate for that bond. You guys worked really, really hard along with our friends at OS1 and got that thing passed. And so we're deeply in debt to you for that. The back in March, you remember there was another vote, and that was approved by the citizens as well. And so we will be receiving $80 million to build a new high school. Last month at the board meeting, the school board did make their site selection for that. We had 2 pieces of property that had been purchased several years ago. We had a piece of property down at Parkertown, which is down there at exit 42 near Shepherd Elementary School. There's an 80-acre site there. And we also had purchased 120 acres up on Overcash Road. That is at exit 42 as well. It's off Amity Oswald, if you know where Amity Oswald Road is, going towards Troutman. And the board decided to put the new high school on the Overcash Road property because it is a larger tract of land. So with all of the athletic facilities and fields and practice fields and all that kind of stuff, it's just a better site. And we also ran into an issue down at Parkertown because it's closer to the Lake Norman area. We had watershed restrictions down there, so the impervious surfaces and all that kind of stuff, that's a headache when you're building a school. So they elected to go with Overcash Road, and I think it's a beautiful site. It's going to make a great school. In the next couple of months, the board will be hiring an architect to begin the design phase of that new high school, and construction will probably start within the next calendar year, and it's a 2-year construction project. So you're looking at about 3.5 years before the school actually is ready for kids.
All right, I have another question from Amy. She asked about reading camps for the summer. You know, it's a good question about retention. We know retention is a huge loss in the summer for kids.
Yeah.
Are there going to be options for that? What would they be, virtual or some others?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there will be some summer remediation this year. It will be confined to the elementary schools. I don't know that they'll even call it reading camp. It will probably be a virtual venue again, but the state is working on that, and they're going to be giving us some direction in the next few weeks. I think it'll probably take on a tune of about a 4-week length of time, and it will be focused on those elementary kids with their reading skills.
I had a question too about the calendar, because the school calendar is a huge, if people don't know, it's a huge political issue. It's really, there's strong lobbying groups to keep the calendar the way it is. How do you feel that the state will be successful in changing that traditional late start August calendar?
Yeah. So you guys probably know that ISS was one of the, I call it innovative. Some people call it renegade school systems that buck the state on the school calendar law. And so we found 12 other districts in North Carolina who went with us. Mooresville Graded was one of those. And so we implemented the innovative calendar, school calendar. And so this year, the current school year that was ending was the first year of that calendar. And the beautiful part of it was we did have that earlier start in August. The kids got out before Memorial Day. The high school kids had their exams before Christmas. We were aligned for the first time ever with Mooresville Graded and Mitchell Community College. So 95% of the feedback that we got on the calendar was overwhelmingly positive from our parents and the community members. Now, down in Raleigh, the eastern part of the state, those folks down there did not like that calendar. And we got reminded pretty often that we were out of compliance with the law and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, with the rapid succession of legislation that was passed to address COVID, our calendar was shot down. And so we were informed just a few weeks ago that they had tightened up on the rules a little bit. The General Assembly, had tightened up on the rules a little bit. And so they were mandating a start date of August the 17th. And so we just couldn't find a workaround on that. So we hastily pulled together a group and said, okay, we're going to have to comply with this new law. And so we have done that. And our board did approve an amended calendar at their last meeting. Since the General Assembly moved the start date from August the 25th to August the 17th, we're still going to be able to do some of the things that we were able to with our innovative calendar. For example, our high schools will still be able to give their exams before Christmas. We will have to cancel our fall break. So that's one of the sacrifices that we have to make, but that's not a huge thing. I will say that John Fraley, Vicki Sawyer, Jeff McNulty have been very supportive of us down in Raleigh. They tried to continue to lobby for us to have that flexibility, but it was just a political hot potato. And so the two bills that were passed, one by the Senate, one by the House, to address the extra funding for COVID thing, those bills were going to fall apart over this silly calendar. So they had to cave in and just compromise. And so what we've asked them to do now going forward, the emergency calendar that has been approved for August the 17th by the state, if the General Assembly will leave that date at mid-August, then we can still work these exams in before Christmas. If they go back to the August 25th start date for not this fall but the following fall, then it'll be impossible. So we have tried to tell our members of the General Assembly, keep that start date at the middle of August if at all possible, and that's the next thing they're going to work on on our behalf.
Well, let us know how we can help you with that.
Well, tourism and the restaurant business and all that kind of stuff is a very powerful, well-funded lobby, and so it carries a lot of weight down there in Raleigh. But what I told our legislative delegation was this: compromise is the essence of politics, and we tried to start in early August and got our hands slapped on that. But if they will compromise with us, if they wait till August 25th, that's too late in the summer. But if they'll keep it at the middle, then it's a win-win. Right. So they're going to work on that.
All right. Crystal asked a question about homeschool. She wants to know if you think about homeschooling children, can you homeschool other children besides your own, or is it just you have to do with who's in your household?
There are a lot of cooperatives where homeschool parents go together and work collaboratively. But when you start homeschooling, you have to apply for a homeschool license with the Department of Non-Public Education. And so when you get your license, you're saying you're going to educate your children, but you can work with other homeschool parents collaboratively. And if there's something that you're better at teaching than your neighbor, then you can do that. The person who holds the homeschool license, though, is the person of record. So they have to assign the grades and that kind of thing.
All right. And Kelly Purdue had a really good question too. One was about, have you thought about polling the parents to get their input on the way the school year should start? And use that as a way to plan your year?
Yes. Dr. Bowen Nutting is our public information officer, and she is planning to reach out to our parents to seek some advice on that. Again, our goal is, when you deal with people's children, golly, you're dealing with the most precious thing they got on this earth. And so, it's almost a sacred trust when people turn their children over to you. And they're saying, I trust you to keep my kids safe. So we do want to reach out to our parents and say, give us your thoughts on this. How extreme do you want us to be with this social distancing? And how difficult do you want it to be to come into your child's school? We know that, gosh, in the good old days, parents could come in and you could have a birthday party for the kids in your child's class, and we can do as much as our parents will support us with. So we do need to gauge where our parents are with this. I will say this, and you guys probably already know this, this COVID thing has turned political, and there's people on both sides of the issue. There are people who think it's a hoax, and there's people who are thinking that you're not doing enough. And so the balance is going to have to be out there in the middle somewhere. But by all means, we need to reach out to our parents, our customers, and engage their level of support.
And she had a follow-up question too about in the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Have they made a deadline for parents to enroll their students in school so that it'll help you with your bricks and mortar, going to the future, what type of infrastructure you might need?
No, the way that works is our funding is based on our highest daily attendance within the first 20 days of school. Okay. So we realize that when school starts, we need to have a pretty high level of confidence from our parents to bring those kids back, because if they don't bring them back, it could negatively impact our funding. And if they bring them back after the 20 days, then we'll be educating those children with no funding. So we're going to have to hit a home run on this and just give parents plenty of assurance that it's safe to come back. Or if you don't think it's safe to come back, then here is a virtual option for you.
Do the virtual options count in your cost per student?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One more question here is there, you might have said this and we missed it, what was the projected date for the new high school to open?
This coming year will be the design phase, and then 2 years of construction.
About 3 years.
So 3 years. It'll open in that 4th year. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. I hope everybody got their answer that they were looking for, or at least understood. Brady, you want to leave us with one last thought?
Well, again, the Chamber of Commerce believes in public education. So thank you very much for all of your support for the school system and for me personally over the years. You guys continue to champion your public schools, because there is a direct correlation between the strength of your public schools and the economic vitality of your community. Thank you. Thank you, Chamber.
Well, since we have you here, I do want to say a big thank you I've only been here a year, but I know you're, like you said, our relationship with Iredell Statesville Schools and Youth has been very strong. We appreciate you and all the years that you've done here in Iredell Statesville Schools. So on behalf of the Chamber and our board and our Educational Workforce Committee and our entire community, we say thank you for your leadership, Brady.
Well, you're kind. Thank you. I've enjoyed every day of this. I will say this, as a chamber, one thing that you guys can do is continue to press the school board. for parent options. You know, in our community, we're fortunate to have IB programs, early colleges, the Career Academy down in Troutman. All of those options, they cost extra money to do those things. But I tell you something, the days of public education being a monopoly and the only game in town are over. We need to view our parents as customers, and we have to be able to go to those customers and say, here are your choices. Which option do you want? Now, one of the things that I hope is going to happen over the next year, we're going to have some buildings empty now. Mount Morn is moving this summer, and so Mount Morn School is going to be sitting there empty. That same thing is going to happen here in Statesville when Northview moves to the Statesville Middle School campus. So I'd love for our board to continue to explore options. Like I think this community needs a Montessori school, and I would open one here in Statesville, and I would open one in Mooresville, and put it in those two empty buildings. We also need to expand career and technical opportunities beyond CATS, so that we have more options in the neighborhoods where the kids live rather than concentrating everything at one school. So in the years ahead, you guys continue to beat that drum that this is a business and it needs to be customer focused. And in this business, you have to be competitive. In Iredell County now, we have students that attend 17 private schools and about 11 different charter schools. And then, of course, 2,000 homeschools. So I tell the board every now and then, on any given day in Iredell County, 6,000 children and their parents get up and make a conscious decision to not come to school with us. If we were any other business, if we were selling hamburgers, we would be saying, holy cow, let's figure out why they're not buying our product. So y'all are business people. Y'all help keep the board mindful of the fact that they need to run this like a business. Yeah.
Thank you, Brady.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank y'all for joining in.